Okay, here we go.
Awesome. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for being here. My name is Renee. I've had the opportunity to meet some of you face to face several times. I love meeting with you, and some of you are brand new to me. So, I will just kind of start with saying that I started at Abundant Life Counseling Center May of last year. Definitely a God ordained type of situation, but I was able to jump in, and it's been great since then. But today I wanted to just answer some questions mostly about play therapy, given kind of a quick overview. This is really a short presentation. It is literally the tip of the iceberg, just to introduce to what the concept is, hopefully to dispel some myths about play therapy, and be able to clarify some things as well. One thing that you'll know is like you interact with play therapists is that we're really big gatekeepers of the profession, as anyone should. As you are putting in hours of supervision and time and money into specializing in something, you're really intentional about protecting that space to make sure that it is being represented well. By that, I mean there are a lot of people who have toys in their playroom and they call themselves play therapists, but those things do not equate. And so you'll hear me using like a lot of verbiage and things that are just really intentional about how special and important it is to make sure we know why we use play therapy and what it is. But at any point, if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute. There's no interruption. I'm happy. Sometimes I can get rolling, so you're gonna have to stop me and slow me down at any point in time.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, so we'll talk about play therapy a little bit as we go through. So hopefully you can see the things and hear all the things. This is just a little bit about me, my background. My mom likes to call me Renae Latimer alphabet soup because there's a lot of letters that come through with being kind of getting to this point. So most of my education has been, all of my education has been here in the Kansas City area. I got my Master's of Science from Avila University. That was in 2012. Also did the child and adolescent certificate at the time. I am clinically licensed in Kansas and Missouri. I'm also a registered play therapist. I am certified in child-centered play therapy specifically. Also a clinical supervisor in Missouri and Kansas, and currently pursuing my RPT supervisor credential. I'm also working in getting certified and working specifically with parents using some of the skills that we use in child center play therapy, giving those skills to the parents so that they are able to use those at home with their kiddos through play as well. I'm a board member of the Kansas Association for Play Therapy, so that is who I am representing today, just kind of doing this outreach. I have a private practice. I also do some public speaking. I have a book that is pending right now. I volunteer specifically with Single Mom KC. They have been my heart for years. I love volunteering with them and their kiddos. I also am a dance fitness instructor, and my roles that are most important to me are I'm a daughter, a sister, an aunt, and a cat mom. So
All right.
that is a little bit about me and who I am. So I've been in the field for a very long time. I'm coming up on 14 years. I kind of feel like an adolescent still in some regards when it comes to how long you're in the field and things that
Yeah.
you're learning as it starts to expand. But that's just a little bit about me and my background. And again, this is the Kansas Association for Play Therapy. Our mission is to promote and encourage and educate others in the use of play therapy, as well as the techniques, and to be able to treat mental health issues of people of all ages. So, play therapy is one of those things that can be used across the lifespan. There are different techniques that were created for certain age and development and what the child is able to be able cognitively to do at the different developmental stages, but it is something that is used across the lifespan, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. This is Andrew. So this is the clip that is super helpful in showing to parents or anyone who doesn't really know what play therapy is. It's like 2 minutes, but it's hilarious. So we'll click on this and hopefully you'll be able to hear it and see it.
Well, hey, Andrew, how was school today?
Well, it was a very frustrating day. Tommy was teasing me about my haircut, and that was embarrassing. As a way of coping with my embarrassment, I became angry. I'm ashamed to admit it, dear mother, but I could not resist striking Tommy with my fist. While this act of emotional release did offer a moment's respite from my embarrassment. The victory was short-lived. The next thing I knew, Tommy had immobilized me with a headlock and gave me what is referred to colloquially as a swirling.
This isn't how kids communicate, but they do communicate in other ways. Play is a child's first language. When a child plays, they express thoughts and feelings that would otherwise remain hidden. That's why play therapy can be a powerful tool for addressing a child's cognitive, behavioral, and emotional challenges. Licensed mental health practitioners use play therapy to help children process their experiences and develop more effective strategies for managing their world. To learn more about play therapy and registered play therapists, visit a4pt.org.
Oh,
I really just need a chocolate milk on the rocks and a long soak in the tub.
I love that. And so the reason why I love that so much is because, um, again, it just really highlights why, oh, it's going the wrong way. Go back, go back, go back. There we go. Highlights why play is important. Sometimes as adults, we put these expectations on children to come in, sit down, tell us all the things that you're feeling, identify your triggers. What was the chain, the behavioral chain that got you from point A to point B? What would you go back and change? We have all of these unrealistic expectations of children, and that's just not how their brain works. And so, what play does is remove this expectation that you have to verbalize to me what your experience is, and it allows you to be in the moment with the child, to sit with that experience with them and help them to make meaning of that experience for themselves. We genuinely believe that the toys are the words that the children use, and play is the way that they communicate. And so when you have toys that are designed to elicit the certain feelings or areas that children can use to play, then that is their catalyst to be able to come in and tell you through play what might be going on. And then again, we have a specific skill set to be able to reflect feelings, to be able to track their behaviors, and things like that. So this is, it's a really short video, but I think it's hilarious. Just this idea that kids don't communicate how we do. And we need to be able to monitor our expectations when they walk into the room of how they show up, and that the child is not there to show up for us, we're there to show up for them. And we need to be able to get in a spot, in a place almost of like humility, to say that I'm going to get on your level and I'm going to accept you where you are instead of trying to get you to my level so that it's comfortable for me.
Mm.
Um, so this is basically why we use play therapy. It helps us to grow and learn, if even outside of just play therapy as a way of using the counseling space. Play in general has so many different beautiful positive outcomes. If you've looked at research on play lately, lots of preschools use it. Lots of different parent approaches use it because of how important it is for just brain and brain development. It's building trust and mastery, learning acceptable behavior. So there's a huge social component that comes in playing and interacting with other people. Helps regulate emotion, reduce anxiety, helps with creative thinking and problem solving. So imagination really comes into play. Communication, and elevates the spirit and self-esteem. It's our first language. So even if we're not verbalizing, kids are able to play. You go out on a playground and strange kids have never seen each other before, and they can play together really well, because that is how we first learn to communicate with people. We learn what's okay. We learn what's not okay. We learn what our limits are, even our physical limits, our emotional limits, when we need to take a break because how long we can be in the moment. And what I've seen is that there's just not a whole lot of just play in general. In working with kids, they walk into the playroom and they're looking for the noisy things. They're looking for a screen. They're like, this doesn't have batteries. What is going on? They're just constantly used to being overstimulated. And it's almost stressful to say, no, you get to choose how to play, because unfortunately, it's becoming more of a foreign concept. And I see this even too with parents. I'm asking them, like, when do you play with your child? What does that look like? And it's like, I can't tell you the last time I sat on the floor and play with my child. I can't tell you the last time um, I let them choose what we were going to do. It's been a while. Or I don't enjoy playing with my child. I don't know how they play. And when we do play together, they want to be the boss of me, and I don't like that. So there has been just this separation from using play as it was designed and as it was initially used as connection. And so that's a big missing piece. So a lot of my work too with parents is in encouraging them to play with their children for these reasons. Any questions so far? Okay. Anytime we are in the playroom, we're always working through the lens of the therapeutic powers of play. So these answer the questions of, why am I doing this? Why am I in this room? Why am I using this intervention? Why did I choose this toy? Why am I using this skill? What is the point of all of this? And so you have the basic four therapeutic powers of play, and then breaks it down about what that looks like. So we'll just use fosters emotional wellness, for example. Catharsis, abrication. So it's kind of like this stress inoculation, stress management, and counter conditioning of fears, as well as positive emotions. So what you're going to see is this. There's a lot that's going to be happening. And there are a lot of times in a play therapy session where I finish and I'm like, what in the world was that? Like, what is going on? I don't know what happened. We were in all four corners of the playroom. At one point, there was a monster eating the dollhouse, and then I was eating fake pizza. I don't know what was going on in this whole 45 minutes that we just did. And so I have to go back and I have to sit down. I have to look back at this and like, what was going on in there? What could have been happening? How was a child using this play session? How was I tracking with them to see what was going on? And then once I kind of set this step back, I'm like, okay, this makes sense. Maybe this is what was going on, or this is how I was able to show up for this child. Again, with the younger children, this may not, again, be explicitly stated, but you're thinking about in those interactions, how did that child show empathy? Because again, in certain play therapy techniques, our goal is not to, and this is going to be like, our goal is not these extrinsic type changes. We're looking for change within the child. And that goes against um, make a treatment plan and check off these treatment goals. So I know that that is necessary, and I do it and I get it. It makes people feel better to see that those goals are being reached. But sometimes it's just not that cut and dry. And so sometimes we are trying to understand, how was this helpful? How was this powerful for this child? Even if they didn't make eye contact for 30 seconds, even if they didn't say, I feel sad, mad, angry, and here's my trigger. What else was going on that made this powerful in that playroom? And empathy is one of those things. It could be, you know what? They said they hit me with the ball on accident. They're like, oh, that was an accident. Are you okay? And it's like, oh, yeah, yeah. I thank you for checking on me. You were worried about if I was okay, and you chose to check on me. So it's important to know why we're doing this and what we're fostering and what's going on. So I'll give you a second to look at that. And any questions that you ask about you can ask about how those may show up in the playroom. I'm also happy to answer too. So if you're, thinking about being a play therapist or anything like that, you should always default back to, why am I using this? And does it go into one of these? The thing about play therapy is that, which I have a slide on this, is that there are so many different therapeutic approaches. Just like in normal counseling, people are always like, what's your therapeutic approach? What lens are you looking through? What is it? It's the same thing for play therapy. So you could walk into four different play therapy rooms and see four different approaches to play therapy, but they will all go back to this therapeutic powers of play. Every clinician that is doing play therapy should be able to tell you why they're using that intervention and which of these that it falls into, because this is what drives why we are doing what we are doing. So, who can be a play therapist? So, play therapists, especially registered play therapists, we tack on the credentials to your initial licensed mental health professional license. So, whatever that is. So, if you've worked to get clinically licensed in these areas, then you go through, you get additional training, you get additional supervision, and then you can fall into one of those categories. Registered play therapist supervisor, or school-based registered play therapist. So again, it's after you're already clinically licensed, and then you attach that credential to your clinical license. And that's another way that we, again, are intentional about um, calling ourselves play therapists too, especially registered play therapists, because again, you can do a play therapy technique, but that is not equivalent to I am a play therapist. I am a registered play therapist. So we need to just be intentional with that. And I think that again goes for any type of specialty. Um, you can teach some bilateral stimulation, but that does not make me an EMDR therapist, right? I could just be using a technique that I have learned, but that does not make me that. And so we just need to be intentional with knowing verbiage wise that this is something that I'm using, but this is not something that I've gone through the steps to earn, if that makes sense. This, and I hope this link works too. Yay, I think it will. Um, This kind of goes into, again, what I was just saying about that there's different types of play therapy. And I'm going to show you this not to overwhelm you, but just to give you an idea of how intentional this play therapy field is. It's not one dimensional. There are a lot of things that are going in behind it to where there's still a lot of choice, even as a clinician, of which direction you want to go. It's kind of funny because people think like, okay, once I go through school and I kind of know what I want to go do, I can just go in that lane, and all the questioning about what I want to do and what's my niche and all that ends. And it's like, no, there's always something, that you're making a choice about, about what you want to do and what you want that to look like. And play therapy is one of those things too. So there is child-centered play therapy, which is sometimes called non-directive, which is that the child leads the play. The child comes into the room. It's like person-centered. It's Carl Rogers, those types of approaches, which is that we believe that the child intrinsically has what they need to tell us who they are. And our goal is just to be there with them. Our goal is to reflect their feelings, track their behavior. We trust them. We trust the child to lead us where they need to go for that session. You also have filial, which is also like CPRT. That's a parent approach. It helps to build the parent-child relationship through play. So the child and the parent are intentionally playing together through their special playtime sessions. And then the parent meets with the clinician to review, or the clinician sees it firsthand. And they talk about the parent and the relationship there. And then again, there's psychodynamic, there's gestalt, there is directive, which again is just more interventions, cognitive behavioral play therapy, ecosystemic play therapy, Adlerian, theraplay, op play. So there are so many different types of play therapy. And I say that because again, you want to be knowing what you're doing as a clinician. And it helps when you have a lens that you're looking through to say, this is what I'm doing. This is the style that I'm using, and this is why. Again, not to pigeonhole yourself or not to get yourself stuck in any verbiage or anything, but because we need to know the nature behind it. What I will say is before I decided, for lack of better words, what type of clinician I would be, um, when it came to play therapy, is I actually tried a lot of different techniques in things. So I went to Mid-America to get my RPT, and they do a great job. They're very child-centered when I was going through. However, they did an amazing job of giving you coursework in many of the different types of play therapy, with the goal being to understand what resonates with you the most. What is it when you sit in that session, when you use these techniques, when you're using these approaches, what part of this resonate, what feels natural? There's always something to be learned, but there's a natural flow when it comes to what approach you choose when you are in a session with the child. which is again why it's important to have supervision, which is why it's important to have those practicum and practice hours so that you are building that confidence in what you're choosing. I am certified in child centered. That is my jam. There are a lot of people who are very intervention heavy and they're like, I don't understand how you just let the child lead. And I don't understand why you don't have an agenda for the session. And how are you going to attack anxiety if you don't have a worksheet? And, like all these different things. But when I am honestly in a session with the child, I believe that they can tell me what they need without me having to give them any guidance in that. In my experience in child centered, I have more of a spiritual connection with the child doing child centered when I'm following their lead. There is nothing more powerful than sitting with and being with a child without telling them what they should or shouldn't be doing. When I think about this, even from like a biblical standpoint, I think about Job and how he is sitting there, he's suffering, and his friends are around him and they're all blaming him. You didn't do this, blah, 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 instead of just sitting with him in that grief and being there. And that's what I think about when I think about child centered play therapy with children. My goal really is to be there. It's to be there with the child. It's to let them tell me what they need. When I start creating expectations for the child, I'm not allowing them to genuinely be themselves and allow for me to accept them. There's some, if I am having an agenda for every session, then sometimes I interrupt their play process. So, for instance, a child might come into the playroom and they're working on building their confidence. And so they're just shooting balls at the basketball, at the basketball hoop. They're in one corner, then they're in the north corner, then they're going all the way far south, and they're just all over the room trying to do their best. And they just practice that. And it's just like you're encouraging them, you're doing that. If I then come in the next time and say, this is what we're doing, but that is what they want to tell me that they need to continue to work on, I interrupt that process for them. And so when I allow the child to lead, I'm allowing them to say, this is what my need is for today. And for a child and what they're experiencing, that could differ from day to day. There are children who are working through, bullying. And so sometimes they come into the playroom and they just need to be in control. They have lost all control for the day. They've been picked on, they've had enough. So they need to come in and they just need to have some control. If I'm not allowing them to tell me that through their play, that I take away kind of their voice and being heard and being accepted for where they are for that day. Some children, they just need nurture and they need to feel like they are important. So if I, again, take away they're telling me that through they want to cook for me and they want to feed me and they want to hold babies. If I dictate that, if I direct that, that I take away their ability to be able to do that. Also, the play therapy space allows for children to be able to make decisions. We want to facilitate decision making and this ability to be able to make choices. And so when I introduce a playroom, this is a playroom. There's lots of toys in here that you can play in many of the ways that you want. That opens them up to it's going to tell me something. Because there are children who are like, great, let's go. This is what I want to do, blah, 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 blah. And there are some children who immediately just freeze and they cannot make decisions. That is telling me something when I allow them to make that choice. So every time we're interacting with that child, we're seeing what are they telling me? Again, not by what they're able to sit on the couch and verbalize, but how they make choices, how they play. A lot of the verbiage that we use too is around themes of play. What are some of these categories that we're seeing pop up over and over again? That kind of brings me to the conversation about toys, which is why toys and toy choices are so important. They're chosen on purpose. And again, not to nerd out, but we believe about our toys. So if you've ever kind of walked into the playroom, you will see that I intentionally set toys out. I put them in a certain pattern. I put them in a certain flow that is therapeutic when it comes to play and therapeutic when it comes to the flow of the room and the space that the child is in. Because when the child is gravitating to certain toys over and over and over, there's a pattern that's there that's being created. There's a theme that's there, and that helps me to bring meaning to that to the child for their internal experiences. Again, because we don't ask a lot of questions in child-centered play therapy. So if the child is crashing the toys over and over, I'm not saying, why are they doing that? What's that car feeling? I'm more just kind of getting curious about what's going on. So it would sound something like, I wonder what's going on with those two cars. I wonder if they're upset about something. Now, a lot of the times the parents will email me and give me a heads up like, oh, they had a tough day. And so I kind of have that in my mind. And I try not to let that drive the session because I just want to be in the moment with the child. But if it's enough, I might even, bring in this, I wonder if there's something that you might be feeling too. Because our ultimate goal is to help them make meaning of their internal experiences by using their play to interpret that for them as best as possible. We don't lead. I'm not trying to interrupt their play. I'm not trying to tell them what they are or are not feeling, but we get to reflect in that space just to help them to make meaning of what some of those patterns or themes of behavior might be. What are your thoughts about that? I've had some questions from some clinicians at Abundant Life about that. Like, this is what this child is doing, or they won't do this, or this is a struggle for me as a clinician when I'm in the room. So, what questions do y'all have about that, like the therapeutic powers of play, or how to show up in the room?
So Renee, this is Monica. So I was really curious about like children who are so have been through so much emotion, probably like kids in foster care and stuff. The kids that don't know how to play, how do you work through that with them?
Yes, that is one thing that kind of becomes a really tense 45 minutes because you're really teaching them that they can make decisions. And so it really just becomes reflecting that a lot. This is a really hard choice for you to make right now. You're not exactly sure what to do. It might be even a little overwhelming for you. What I might do is just walk them through different stations, so to speak, kind of get them familiar with the flow and bring their attention to specific toys. But I still don't specifically initiate the play. I just kind of reflect the difficulty for them in making that decision. And there have been times where the child just kind of stands there and they're very anxious, but I even don't interrupt that. Because we're building their window of tolerance. I'm sure at this point, somebody, all probably heard the window of tolerance and what that means. But for that child, what you're doing is you're building that level of discomfort of I can be anxious and uncertain and I can tolerate it in the moment. So I'm just empathically being with them, that unconditional positive regard. This is really hard for you, but we don't have to rush this discomfort. And I'm here. I'm here with you in this moment of discomfort too.
Thank you. That's great. I love it.
What other questions about play therapy or things that you've used or things that you've had questions about?
I've only done telehealth since I've started the internship. How does therapy translate in a telehealth situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. The play therapists rallied together so well during the pandemic to where they created actual intervention protocols for online play therapy. And a lot of those are directive, right? So it is intervention specifically for the different stages of play therapy. A lot of art interventions, sometimes they're interactive, like you can share your screen in a lot of different ways. So those are things that are specific to certain age groups. Oh my gosh, what a learning curve. I specialize in children between the ages of 3 and 10. They are my babies. I don't know. They get my heart. It is tiresome, but I tell you what, there's something about them. And so having a 5-year-old during the pandemic try to do telehealth non-directive was nothing short of a disaster. The number of ceilings I saw, children opening windows, trying to show me their roof. I'm like, I'm about to get motion sickness. I don't know what's happening here. Put the phone down, pick it back up. No, don't pick up your dog. No, don't. I don't need to see your clock. Like there was so much that was happening. And so, what honestly really had to happen is that we had to take a quick turn into being more directive, which is a hard challenge. But I think that that's a beautiful thing about play therapy, too, is that when you're eclectic in your approach, you can make some of those adjustments based on what the child can handle. Um, and so there are some which I can, um, at the very end, I'll drop in one of the things that I use, some creative interventions online to be able to give you as a resource. And they can be used with adults too. Again, these are just really directed interventions that help with different stages of the therapeutic process.
So that would have been my next question because I was wondering, do you use any of this with adults?
Yeah, so it is definitely used across the lifespan, especially with sand tray. So as you're working with an adult and you're identifying kind of where they are, especially from an emotional standpoint, some adults, especially if there's like a history of trauma or things like that, are chronologically one age, but emotionally maybe another age, and there may be some needs that weren't met at that certain developmental stage. So play allows them to get back to that stage. And sand tray is one of the things that is used a lot as a play therapy intervention to be able to facilitate that. Now, that in and of itself kind of has its own thing too. So there is sand tray, there's sand play. Again, they're gatekeeping, just like play therapists are with that. They're very intentional about what you say and what you're using, but that is something that can be used as well. Grief and loss play interventions are very powerful for adults as well, because again, it lets them be in the moment. It takes them out of that cognitive brain where they're just talking about it, and it lets them experience what it's like. To be able to feel that feeling, especially with like baby dolls and feeding and, um, building and mastery and in any of those types of techniques and interventions that can be very powerful with adults too. There's been research even in the geriatric population for those um, who've lost their ability to speak and using toys and miniatures in sing tray to give them the ability to process through what they may be experiencing because they just don't have literally the language or the words to use. And so there's been research done in that population as well.
Wow.
Renae, can you talk more about getting parent buy-in, especially being that you are, client-centered and non-directive, and I'm sure you've interacted with and encountered parents that are just hemming and hawing and asking you to justify why you're just playing with their kid. So would love to
Yeah.
hear about
Yeah, so that's a great question. We really have to sell child-centered a lot, which is so crazy to me because it is like I get to just be with your child and identify, like what's going on. But one of my main points is that your child is going to tell me what they need, which would make it easier for me to communicate that with you. If your child is able to tell me what's going on and I'm able to observe what's going on, it's going to be easier for you so that way I can give you what you need to be able to feel less stressed at home. And then I always say, you know what, you can go online and you can find a deep breathing technique. You don't need to pay me 45, you don't need to pay me money for 45 minutes to teach your child how to deep breathe. We need to know what your child needs in this moment, and I can do that using these skills and these techniques. Because I have the time, the uninterrupted time. I'm going to be able to lay eyes where maybe you can't. I'm going to be able to see those yellow flags where maybe you're a hardworking parent and you just can't sit down and observe your child uninterrupted for 45 minutes once a week. That is something that I can do for you to help you to feel empowered to parent your child outside of these moments.
That's powerful. I like that reframe.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Good. So obviously I come from a different perspective than all of you because I'm not in school. I haven't been to school to be a counselor. So I'm not don't have the knowledge base that all of you are coming from. But just as somebody who gets questions about play therapy, what is it? What isn't it? This is amazing. I want to come back and rewatch it again just to absorb all of it a little bit more. But along with Olivia, what you were saying a little bit, and then just as a parent, kind of processing things like what questions might they have, or hearing you go through those different approaches. I think at first, I hope this isn't, I hope this is helpful, and bear with me as I try to put words to it. But at first, hearing you explain like the approach that you use, I could see how parents would be like, well, I don't want my kid to think that they're like the center of their world, and the world doesn't revolve around them, or even just like from a faith-based perspective of like, we want like God to be the center of our lives and like his truth to lead our lives. So like, why are we looking in our child who is just a child, like for those answers? But then thinking through, as you've explained that, like even as adults, like when our needs are met, when we're not operating out of a stress behavior, we're allowed to be the people that God made us to be. And then we can go into the world and have compassion and show kindness and not operate from a place of like survival or whatnot. So at first it sounds I don't know. I don't want this to sound harsh. At first, it might sound selfish or like self-centered, but really, like you're doing exactly like what you said. You're just being there with that person so that they can work through whatever the situation is and then go be the person that God made them to be. So, is that kind of like accurate somewhat, or are there
Yeah,
questions? Do you
no,
get
that's
parent
good.
questions like that?
Yes. Absolutely. That's so good because it's true. Because a playroom can be used for I have this stress and I kind of need to get it out, or I need to be in a space where I'm going to be um, accepted. The play therapy space really is not about judgment. There's not a whole lot of correction. I mean, we set limits, right? Like you just can't come up and like punch me and I'm like, oh, I accept it. But like there's certain things that we accept the child as they are, and that relationship is built in those moments, and because they feel that, then they almost kind of like discharge, and that's where that therapeutic play of catharsis comes in. It's like they're able to just emote kind of in that space, so that yes, they're creating room and capacity to be able to go out in the world and tolerate what the world is giving them, because they have this non-judgmental space to just be themselves, to just show up without any expectations of performance, to just show up without any expectations of rules to follow, and to get a little bit of power and control back. We always say a felt sense of power and control, because kids are always told what to do throughout their day. There's rules, there's bedtime, there's routine, and they need that. They need that structure. They need to be able to follow those types of things. And that takes away their power and control, in so many different levels. And if a child has a temperament to where that is what they need, then play therapy also gives them that by giving them the opportunity to just share that power and control in those moments. And it is regulated by, again, a clinician who has been trained to know how to know what you're looking at and help the child stay within what is healthy for them. Because it is not healthy for the child to come into the playroom and just run amok. That's not therapeutic. It's not helpful. So we're trained to help them say, hey, you feel out of control today. Let me help you to figure out how to get that control back in a way that's healthy and helpful for you. Does that make sense? So it's not just like this open-ended of the child leads and they're whoop what to do, no holds barred, they just do their thing. No, it's I need them to tell me so that I can help them to figure out how to kind of refine it and finesse it.
Yeah.
And I've had, parents ask to, well, spiritually, well, what do you do? Do you pray with my child? Do you give them Bible verses? Do you? And again, from a child-centered standpoint, because it is so experiential, is that what I explain to the parents is that while, and this is for my younger kiddo, some of my 9 and 10-year-olds, I will do some more sort of directive things and like, worry and helping them with like Bible verses and stuff. But some of my littles, I tell them my main role in your child's play in this playroom is to intercede for your child. And so while I am in here with your child, I am praying. Sometimes it's in the spirit, and I am internally praying for your child and with your child while they're in their moment. That is the most powerful thing that I can do as I'm helping your child understand and make meaning of their internal experiences when they don't have the words to tell you or me. And so that is why I say too that it is important that you know what you have the grace to do as a clinician. I genuinely believe that I am graced to be a play therapist because God has given me the capacity to be able to hold all this stuff that this kid is bringing in. Um, which includes to be able to pray and be with them in the moments of what they have going on internally and interceding. And when you're interceding, you're holding on to that stuff and it gets heavy. That's also why I say that it's not for everybody. You know, if you look by, you walk by the room, you might see me having a sword fight going at it, and it might be loud. Lord bless the people who are on the other two walls of, of faith. But it can get loud, and there's a lot that is going on in there. But what is happening is that I'm holding space. If this child is in here, it's like I need a sword fight for 45 minutes. Not only is that physical for me, but that is spiritual for me. That is mental for me. I'm holding my own regulation in those moments to be able to stay in the moment with the child. So there's so much that is happening again spiritually with that child in the moment that is beyond just here, take this skill with you. It is like, no, I'm carrying this with you so that you don't have to carry this burden alone.
Yeah, that's so good.
So it sounds like you also use it with teenagers. Um, how do you navigate when they are, they get to the place where like, oh, I'm too old to do that? How do you get past
Yes.
that?
Yes. So there is so with child-centered play therapy, again, technically, chronologically, 10 is like where we decide research has shown, I should say, that it's not the non-directive piece may not be as therapeutic for them. And so that's when we would introduce different toys into the playroom that might be more directive or more focused and just kind of the non-directive approach. So for instance, different board games. I love cooperative board games. I don't know if y'all have ever heard of like Peaceable Kingdom. If you get on Amazon and you look up Peaceable Kingdom, it is a company that creates these cooperative board games where you work together to toward a certain goal. And the reason why I love those is because it's again, it's play, you're interacting with the child, but it's not a competition. You're teaching them again those therapeutic powers of play. What are these social skills that they're learning? They're learning empathy, they're learning communication. Hey, we're in this maze together, and if you don't let me know kind of what you need, where your thoughts are with this, we're not going to be successful together. And so those are some of my favorite things to bring into the playroom with some of the older kids to where they're still, again, looking through the therapeutic powers of play, but it's in a way that is relationship enhancing in those moments. Very rarely do I do games where it's like a competition. Now, if the child chooses that, of course, I'm going to do it with them. But a lot of the things that I do for the older kiddos, I still want to be more cooperative in nature. Um, Kind of depending on where they are too. Now, I will say there are some pre-adolescents that I get and they're working through tolerating failure. And in those moments, so first I build a relationship. I never come out of the gate like, hey, we're going in today, day one, you're failing, we're going to tolerate it. But it's like we build a relationship, kind of build it up, and then I will slowly integrate, like, hey, we're going to try something different today. It might make you feel uncomfortable, but this is something that you can tolerate. And then I will do some more, but even then it's more fun. Like I love charades, or like if you've ever played the board game Gestures, where it's like it looks like a movie thing where you just like flip it down and have to guess and the cards like fall and it's kind of stressful but it's still fun because you're just acting things out. So even those type of things I'm intentional with doing in a way that is therapeutic after we've established a relationship to get them closer to feeling like they can tolerate some of that discomfort a little bit more. I hope that answers your question, Felicia.
Hi, Renee. I was wondering what your approach or what techniques you would use when working with children with special needs. My daughter, she's on the spectrum, so I've been really curious about working with that population specifically.
Yes. Um, I love that game. It's so good. So Ot Play is out of Springfield. Dr. Jason Grant specializes in neurodivergence in play therapy. So I would look up Dr. Jason Grant. Again, that's Ot Play. He's one of the ones that came up to, let me see if I can, I think somebody might have put that in the chat too, the Play Strong Institute. If you, thank you, whoever did that. If you click on that, Ot Play is one of those big things that is, again, it is very intentional with how it's being used with the play, also with the interventions and the expectations of what we can expect with the neurodivergent child, more specifically, kind of based on their needs, their physical needs as well. So you would set up the playroom specifically to help them meet a certain physical need, whether that is making sure that the doors in the office space are accommodating to wheelchairs, whether that is you being the play therapist, being able to be on the floor if the child needs to be there, specific toys that are sensory specific to that child. So if it is something that they need to be on something to where they're moving or they're engaged, or if they need like noise canceling headphones, like you just create the environment again of acceptance and the relationship and being able um, to be able to meet them where they are and be able to say, hey, this space is set up just for you, so that they again can come in and feel like they can show you what they need. And then also knowing too if directed interventions are the way to go with them as well. But Op Play is an amazing. He's an incredible job. We actually had him um, last year come to our Association for Play Therapy conference. He's great.
Thank you. That was really helpful.
You're welcome.
Could you talk a little bit about art in the therapy room? I work with a significant number of middle schoolers,
Yeah.
and I'm finding that just having art supplies accessible is very helpful. But I'm also like finding myself looking up like a technique to use. Like I had a client this week process some rough news
Mm.
with some watercolors and just identifying her feeling. And then I had her step into the picture created and tell me what that picture would tell me.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of thing, like most of them aren't going to play with a toy if I bring it out or have it in the room, but they are engaged in the art stuff.
Absolutely. And I think that's knowing your client too. That goes back to that relationship. If you know what your client's strengths are, you know the best way that they play, then you'll be able to have what they need in order to really facilitate that. And I do think, Cindy, there's something to be said about having it there and letting them choose kind of where they want to go with that. And then you knowing based on your clinical experience, like, okay, I can go here. This is what they're showing me. I can take this a step further by saying, hey, why don't you put yourself into that? What's that experience like for you? And then adjusting it to them. But yeah, I think just having them there available, art is very, very powerful. And again, there are specific art therapists who, again, specialize just in art therapy and specialize in what those approaches are and what that looks like. But it's always a great option to bring into the playroom for sure.
Thank you. I'm kind of like toying with the art therapy idea, and
Yeah.
I'm like really intrigued with sand tray as well.
It's so good. So good. Yeah. Let's see. So this is the website if you're interested more in like play therapy, getting research. Though there is the International Journal of Play Therapy, which they put out every quarter, which is really cool to be able to access what research is happening in the play therapy world, how is it evolving, what is going on. You can also order free brochures through this website as well, um, to be able to give out to people or have in the office, which we have up front. They've done a great job of just putting some up there for people who have more questions about that part of it. And then we are hosting Dr. Eliana Gill in Wichita this April. She's going to be doing a 2-day play therapy training for us. Day one is extended play-based developmental assessment, which We love some assessment. What is going on at these different developmental stages is so cool to see. And then also the impact of sexual abuse on children, being able to assess and treat and using principles in that. And then also post-traumatic play in children and what clinicians should know. So I would say, even if you're like, I don't want to pursue a RPT, once I'm done with school, I'm done. I'm not doing anything else. I would always recommend trying to just get into a training, go to a 1 day or go to a 3 hour one, to just be in the know about what's research, what's specific, what is going on, what's happening in the play therapy world, what's evolving, and get curious about it because it is something that we're going to be using just more and more, especially with Gen Alpha that's coming along. They're coming in hot. And so I'm always like, the more play therapists, the better. So if you've ever been interested in it, now is the time to just kind of dig in, look into it, get some information on it. And again, I highly value it. I think it is something that is just so powerful. I've seen, children and parents develop and change so much when they can just really get into playing with each other and um, because it creates attunement. When I'm face to face with you without any distractions, I'm just gonna know more about you and attune to you a little bit better, and be able to meet you where you are and accept you where you are. So yeah. Anything else? I was gonna do an intervention, but I've been talking long enough, so I will let me see. I can drop that in the chat once I stop. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so I can drop this creative
You can
intervention.
do an intervention if you want,
See.
if you have one.
Okay. Here is this. I'm gonna put this here. That is a booklet PDF of um, one of it's 135 pages of interventions. So this is one of the things that we just gravitated toward again during the pandemic, to be able to do. So it's categorized into like engagement and assessment, treatment, discharge. It is kind of broken out into then. Again, this is something that you can use with adults, you can use with children, and we can kind of go from there. Um, so one that I like to do is called Magic Key. Does everybody have like paper, marker, something like that to do something? It's pretty quick. You're not going to have to show off your art skills, so don't worry about it. There's no pressure to be an artist in this way. But just grab what you got. And this one is in that booklet that I shared in the chat too. So if you want to use it. So this is called the Magic Key. And our goal with this one with the client is to help them to be able to, so this will be used for children 9 to 16. So I'm talking about my older kids who have the capacity to be able to verbalize more. So not the younger kiddos where I'll be doing non-directive with. This is targeted towards some of the older kiddos to be able to help them talk about loss, wishes, desires, or wants, to be able to help them connect with feelings and to be able to open up the therapeutic relationship to kind of identify where the child is. So you would start with reading this script. Imagine that you've been given a magic key that opens one room in a huge castle. There are 4 floors in this castle, and since the castle is huge, there are many rooms on each floor. But your magic key only opens one of the many, many rooms in the castle. Pretend you go from room to room, from floor to floor, trying your magic key at each door until finally you come to the door that your key opens. You turn the key and the lock opens. Because you have been given the magic key that only opens this door, what you see is the one thing money can't buy that you always thought would make you happy. Pretend you are looking into that room. What is it that you see? What is that one thing that has been missing that you think would make you happy? When you have a clear picture, please draw it as best as you can. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to draw out what you think that you would see once your key opens that door and you're looking inside and it's right there in front of you. I want you to take just a few minutes and draw that out. Take about another minute. Even if you're using stick figures and symbols, it's all good. Is anybody brave enough to come off mute and chat with us a little bit about what you've created? Feel free to share your drawing or not. I invite you to choose if you want to share that or not, but more so just kind of your experience of what it was like to hear that prompt. How do you think you could potentially use this in a session? What it was like for you to be in that experience and what your client might experience.
I was surprised at how quickly something came to mind.
Mm-hmm.
And not if. I will be using it on Tuesday. Thank you.
You're welcome. I love it. That's the biggest compliment when you can take something away from a training, be like, I want to use this ASAP. Okay. Yeah. So it was quick. Something came to mind pretty quickly, which is so interesting, Cindy, because sometimes it doesn't take a deep dive. It just takes intention to really think about something that might just be right there at the surface, ready to come on out. Yeah. What else? Anybody
I
else?
think this prompt reminded me a lot of like SFBT's miracle question,
Oh,
but
yes. Yes.
it's putting it in a more creative and visual way, I think. So it's less abstract,
Yes.
meaning that not only working better for kids, but also maybe for adults who have a harder time with the abstract.
Mhm. Oh, that's a really great point, Ben. I agree. It's kind of, again, getting on those wishes and those desires. And, some people will say will help to lead the treatment or help lead the treatment plan, if you will, by getting an idea of where are they with what their wishes and desires, what is their viewpoint about what might be missing, and then therapeutically, how might that facilitate the play. Charlie, you drew your family. You shared that in the chat. Got the family in a house there. Yeah.
So Renee,
I would
once
say it
you
kind of
go ahead,
okay,
Felicia.
I'm sorry. I was gonna say as I kind of started drawing, I got a little emotional,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I didn't expect that.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, which is sometimes too, when that happens for a client, there may be a little bit of hesitation to go there. And that in and of itself is an assessment piece too, that can be reflected back to the client, like this is an emotional experience for you. You weren't expecting to feel that. And then you kind of you're wondering what to do with that. If this is a time for you to pursue that, if you're wanting to continue in this and just sitting in that with them too.
So Renee, with some of your older, you said 9 to 16-year-olds, once you have the picture that they've drawn, um, how do you kind of work backwards with them and kind of process like what they were experiencing maybe in that pause or as they were like drawing the picture or coloring it in or however they choose to do it? How do you go from like that drawing aspect and getting like that internal and make it external into the room?
Yeah. So that really goes back into your specific modality and how you choose to approach the therapeutic intervention in play. So for me, I again just kind of default back to that child person centered. So a lot of mine would be a lot of reflection. You chose to use that color. What do you notice about? So if I was just looking at Charlie's, like, what do you notice about where the people are? What do you notice about how close they are, or what's it like for you to look at this? I'm wondering if this reflects anything about your feelings, or if they're there for relational stuff, if your partner were to look at this, I'm wondering what they might think or feel looking at this. And so it's more adopting curiosity about their experiences more than it is trying to get them to really like label it, so to speak. You're just trying to increase their insight into what's going on. And so just like, yeah, reflecting of, you chose this, or if you notice an affect shift, like Felicia was saying, is bringing that to their attention. Oh, when you started on this side of it, you kind of started to tear up a little bit, or you started to draw this, but you changed your mind and you erased it, and you're just reflecting and bringing their attention to, again, those things that are happening in that process, and then allowing them to choose when they want to fill in that additional context for the therapeutic moment.
What I'm picking up on what you're saying, Renee, and even my experience doing this is it's not just the object of the client's desire that we're looking at, but it's their reaction to their own desire. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
Yes, and their ability to identify
Mm.
what their wants, wishes, and desires are. Where are they with that? And so that's why it's a really big good for assessment, because you're looking for a lot of different things. What is their capacity? Can they verbalize it? Are they able to kind of get there and engage in that way? So there's a lot of assessment things that you're looking for in those moments for sure. Let's see, John, mine is our future hope for our family. Could help frame what I'm working towards, because I feel like I can just, yeah, yeah, yeah. This is a good one. It's a projective drawing, because you're kind of just out there identifying kind of your own internal stuff and deciding, and they're deciding, what is it? A lot of times you'll see this with like grief and loss. This one is used big with grief and loss, because sometimes, kids will draw people that are there that are no longer there, or a pet that's there and no longer there. And so you're really just processing with them through that grief and loss and what that means too. Well, that's all I have for today. Thank y'all so much. This is great. I'm glad I was able to do this again. This is just a tip top of all the things that play therapy is able to provide. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can for y'all. Yeah, at any point in time, don't hesitate to reach out. It's been such a pleasure. Thanks, Doug, for letting me do it.
Absolutely. I appreciate you doing this. Anytime. Next Friday?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was so awesome. Of course, you do great work, and so everybody, who knows, it's like if I have questions, I mean, Renee's the one I go to, and then sometimes I direct people to her directly and everything too. So she's always so gracious to help. So, wealth of knowledge for sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well,
Yeah.
everybody have a great weekend. Again, don't hesitate to reach out. It's good to see y'all.